There's Panimim, inner lights that clothe themselves in a kli. Okay, on page 325, the Rebbe is explaining the sneeze. He doesn't want to come up. Okay, so we won't.
Of course.
The lights in here aren't bright enough, I guess. We answered our question relative to the contradiction in the Maimar Chazal and the contradiction in the Psukim. How can it be that some Psukim say and some Maimar Chazal say that we somehow affect the Yibishter with our Avodah, and others say that we don't affect? So what was our answer? Atik and Arich. Right? Yeah, they're still there with the Chassid. Right? Atik and Arich. Atik is Pnimius Keser, meaning what Keser is, right? Pnimius is the being of the thing. What is it? So what is Keser? Completely transcendent level of reality. Arich is, so to speak, I mean, the Bible calls it the lower level of Keser, or, and again, and we mentioned it's in other places called Chitzonius Keser. What does that mean? What Keser does, the function of Keser. So what does Keser do? It's the source of the next level of reality, which is, in this case, Chochmah Datzilus, right? But it'll be the Chochmah of any world, because every world will have its Keser, right? The Keser will be the source of the first revealed state of the next world, right? Just like everything you do has its own Ratzon, right? Which is the Makif that comes into Pnimius that expresses your, by you talking or your hand moving or whatever it is that you're doing. Well, and that all came from a makif. It came from a rutzing to do that. Okay. So that was our nice, neat little answer to the question, right? Atik, arich, and atik is not affected. It's transcendent. We don't reach that place with our Veda. Arich, that's the source of all the light that's drawn down into Eilam Atzilus. We say, the Rebbe didn't say it here, but it's said all over Chassidus, that when you and I do a mitzvah, we're meisif in Eilam Atzilus, we increase light in Eilam Atzilus, and therefore through all of Seder Ishtashlus, through all four worlds. If that's the case, so then, so to speak, we're touching Arich. So Arich is the button, so to speak, touching the button. Okay.
Rabbi,
Yeah.
what's happening with that light? Because I'm reading Basvagan touching you the Aleph. There, the Rebbe was saying that the light is not adding to the light itself there in Atzilus, but like in a basket that you can draw down.
But that what you can draw down?
So when you do a mitzvah, it adds light, but not to the light itself, but in a separate basket.
Okay, Sandra. But meaning, for our purposes, what are we talking about? We're talking about the fact that you and I can affect certain states of reality. How exactly that affects right now in our mind, he's not talking about that, what the effect is. He's about to. But we're going to see today how it affects the Urus. We started yesterday, the Urus and the Kali of those worlds. Okay, say that. But okay. I'm writing what the Rebbe writes in this line, not what's usually said. I drag it up maybe. Okay. I'm doing this for someone I know. I don't remember who it is. Eilam Atzilus. I don't remember who it is. Some guy, some good guy asked me to do something. I better block these things out of my memory, but I missed some. Just so we can get some sort of everything we've been talking about. Eilam Atzilus. Eilam Abriya, Eilam Yetzira, and Eilam Hasiya, right, which is this world, right? Those are the four worlds. What's the Keser of Atzilus? Atik and Atik. This is Pnimis Keser, what Keser is, which is a completely transcendent level. This is what Keser, so to speak, does. What does Arich Anpin mean? Long face, right? You might have seen, when you're learning Chassidus, you've seen Chokhmah. It's even going to fall down if I move this. A bunch of women don't come out of it. Chokhmah, Bina, Das, okay. And Chesed, Gvura, Tiferes, Netzach, Chayid, and Yesod. What do we sometimes call that? You ever seen that? Zoh.
Zayin.
What's that?
Zayin Anpin.
Zair Anpin. What does Zair mean?
Small.
Small. Large, small. Yeah? Okay. That was just.
And then the large would be Chabad. No?
Yeah. Alright. Large is Arach. Arach Anpin. L'mayla Chabad. Keser. Not Seichel Keser. Right? Okay? So those are the four worlds. This is Seder Yishtalshelus. Right? Now, obviously, we know that these worlds are different than that world, because this world's completely godly, and these worlds are all yesh. So we could call this ayin. That's not right. Ayin, and we can call this yesh. Right? Okay, that's true. Yeah? I mean,
What's under Keser?
what's under?
What's the words under it? The words you want under it.
Pnimius and Madriga Tachtoina. In our mimer, the Rebbe is talking about Arach Anpin, Arach, as Madriga Tachtoina, or Kitzenis. He doesn't say Kitzenis.
So when you say Atik or Arach, it's just talking about a form of a level that's higher than the four worlds? That's what we're talking.
It's called Keser. When you say Atik and Arach, you are generally talking about Keser of Atzilus, unless mentioned otherwise. Sometimes you'll talk about Atik or Bria. Okay, say that. But when you say Atik and Arach, you see Atik and Arach in a mimer, you were talking about Keser of Atzilus. That's what you're talking about. Two different levels of Keser of Atzilus. The third level is a level called Rod Law, which isn't in our mimer. And if I hadn't sat down, I'd write it on the board. But I sat down. Rod Law. Reisha de lo yoda v'lo is yoda, the head that doesn't know and isn't known. What's that corresponding to? So what's Arach? We said there are three different aspects of Keser. What are the three different aspects of Keser that we've talked about? I'll name one, Ratzon. What else? Tainug and Emunah. Right? Ratzon, Tainug, and Emunah, the three different heads of the crown. Right? Okay, so Ratzon, that's Arach. Tainug, that's Atik.
How do you spell Tainug?
Tough ayin. Nun Rod Gimel. Right? That's Atik is Tainug. Radla is Emunah. What's Radla? That level of your neshama that's completely one with Atzmus. So I mentioned this to you. I once asked the mashpia, what is it that the head doesn't know and isn't known? The head that doesn't know and isn't known. So what doesn't it know exactly? So his answer to me was, that's the place in the neshama that doesn't know whether it's the Eibishter or a neshama. It's the place in you and I that's, so to speak, indistinguishable from the Eibishter. Wow. I was just about to wipe my coffee off my mouth with this tissue, but I'm glad I didn't, because it's covered with this side's clean. Okay. Yeah? Does that help? You can take a picture of it now. Everybody does that. They take pictures of these things you write on the board. All right. Okay. So now, let's see what the Rebbe says. Ubi or inyan. Okay, now we started this yesterday, but we're going to start again. Right, and obviously those things that we explained at length yesterday, we won't have to explain at length today, we'll do, because we know it. Ubi or inyan. Shebaseder Yishtalshelus. 5 lines down, 6 lines down on page 325. Right? In Seder Yishtalshelus, Nageya inyan Aveda, our Aveda affects Hein ba Kelim, both the Kelim of Seder Yishtalshelus and the others, and the light of Seder Yishtalshelus. The Hine. Inyan a Kelim, what are Kelim about? Shuhela Ma'or, Talked about this yesterday at length, which is the concealment of the light. It hides the infinite nature of the light and allows only for the revelation of some finite aspect of the light. And so, therefore, what do kelim allow for? Hu nesinas makom lemetzias zulas. Kelim are that which allows for the existence, metzias, of the zulas, the other, something else. Meaning, kelim allow for the existence of two. Well, okay, so then each one is the zulas of the other. Now, of course, there can be 2 billion, 2 zillion, 2 whatever. Ki, kashera or meir, when the light itself shines. Azayeshna rakamakar, when you're aware of only the source of the light. The light reveals its source. That's what light's all about. That's why we call revealed levels of godliness or. Because what are they revealing? Their source in a higher level. The sunlight revealed the sun to such an extent that we'll even blur the distinction between the two, and we've talked about this many times, and we might say, and this is on one level, it's an absolutely absurd thing to say. On the other hand, people say it all the time, and we understand it to not be absurd. A person will say, boy, the sun's bright today. Boy, the sun's hot today. That's a stupid thing to say. The sun is hot. The sun is exactly nothing happened to the sun. No, what do you really mean? Sunlight is hot today. Boy, the sunlight is bright. Because you have nothing to do with the sun. You have to do with sunlight, which is 93 million miles away from the sun. Okay, but what's light all about? Light is all about revealing its source. Ad kedei kach, that what do we say about light? It's me'ein hama'or. It's like its source. So we can actually reasonably say sun as opposed to sunlight, even though, of course, in truth, you're a long way away from the sun, Baruch Hashem. Otherwise, you'd need a lot of lotion to, not get a burn. Pikasher or meir az yeshna rakamakar, ve'ein shum metzias tezilas, and there's no existence of the other. What are you aware of? Light. Infinite reality, oneness. Aval, kelim, what do kelim do? Shem helim or, they're concealing the light. Again, concealing only one aspect of the light, the infinite aspect of the light, the unity of the light. Heim neisni makim lemetzias tezulas. They allow for the existence of the other, right? So an example of that relative to sunlight would be a latticed window. When the sun shines in the window, so how many boxes of light are there on the carpet? Might be 15 boxes of light on the carpet. What does that mean? There's 15 sources of light? No, there's not 15 sources of light. That kli allowed for differentiated light to shine on the carpet, so you can count 15 boxes of light on the carpet, but lamaisa, it's all one. Right? The light itself is one. It just happens to come through this kli called a window with little, metal pieces on it. And so it appears on the carpet as different pieces of light. Right? Well, that's what kelim do to light. In essence, it's still one. It's not 10. It's one. What does a prism do? Prism does the same thing, right? It was a prism, and this is similar to Gilui Helim that we talk about in Atzilus. The prism allows you to see the differentiated light that's incorporated in the one light that's on the other side of the prism, right? So what do you see? You see the rainbow on the second side of the prism. Oh, so the prism differentiates within the light itself, because after all, the light has different properties, different colors, etc., etc. Okay. But when it's in its original state, you don't see that. They're all incorporated in the oneness of the light. Okay, the light then shines through a prism. The prism somehow, I don't know how it does this, but the prism separates the light into different colors. And now you see differentiated colors, right? Through that kli. Is it now, however many shades of color are there? Usually there's 3 major, and then sort of you see in between them, colors sort of like, you see a little green in between the red and the blue. Okay, but you'll see let's say 5 different shades of color that are shining on whatever it is you're shining the prism on. Okay, does that mean there's 5 different pieces of light there? No, of course not. It's one light. It's just you're revealing the differentiation. It was existed in the light, but was hidden, and now it's revealed. So that's Atzilus. That's what Kalim do. About Kalim Shem Helamor, him nosim makam lemetzias the zulas. Va'ad, to such an extent. 10 lines down, something like that. 3 words left on the line. Va'ad, shebaribu ishtalshlus, through the multitudinous downward emanations. Nishava mehem bechinas nivroim. What can ultimately happen? Nivroim, created reality. Zulas mamish. Zulas, that's such a zulas that if they bump into each other, they can't merge. They stay separate. V'liyos she'kelim eminyan shel zulas, and since the kelim are the notion of the other, v'seif, and when all is said and done, hine al yedei ribu yishtalshlus, through the downward emanation of all of this light, nasa min bechinas nivroim, it can ultimately result in created reality. Lochein bechinas kelim, then obviously, in the state of a kelim, negei inyan avedas and nivroim, then obviously our aveda affects kelim. Why? Well, we're a result of kelim, right? So everything we do, what are we doing? We're using kelim, and we're manipulating kelim, and therefore we're hopefully elevating the kelim and affecting that. We can also do the opposite. Here we're talking about positive things. We're elevating those kelim. Why? Well, because we ourselves are a function of the fact that Or is clothed in kelim, and everything that we encounter is a function of the fact that Oris are clothed in kelim. And so we're working with that reality and hopefully elevating it. So we take the physical object and elevate it by using it for the Eibishter. Okay, so it's fairly straightforward to say that we affect the Kli. But how do we affect the Or? The Or is the Or. I mean, why should we affect the Or? Well, we're saying, the Rebbe already told us we're also affecting the Or. How? Let's see. All right, so first the Rebbe is going to finish up with Kalim. V'hainu, shal yedei heder aveda, through a lack of aveda, what can we do? Naseh gamba Kalim. We can bring about a blemish in the Kli. Because the Kli is no longer expressing what it was meant to express. What was this Kli created to do? Reveal the godliness in it. And if I don't use it for that purpose, then I've blemished the Kli to the extent that it's not fulfilling its purpose. Okay, but if I use it for something positive, then Baruch Hashem, I fulfill the purpose of the Kli, and I allow for some revelation of the Or in that thing to the extent that I realize that this thing, even though on one hand it's hiding godliness, it's really created by Him and an expression of Him, and I want to use it in that sense. I want to use it for that purpose, to reveal godliness as opposed to conceal godliness. And that's a tikkun of the Kli. Okay. Or, chas v'shalom, a person can bring about a pagam in the Kli. Now, the Kli doesn't necessarily have to be a physical object. The Kli can be an opportunity in time, space. Right? You meet a person on the street and you have the opportunity to have a positive encounter with that person and create a situation where by virtue of meeting you in the street, that person has been elevated. Either they're feeling somewhat more joyful about life, or they've learned something interesting, or they just whatever. They just feel better having met you than they felt before they met you. Okay, so that's the opportunity the Eibusha gave you by virtue of having you run into that person on the street, whether you know them or you don't know them. Okay, fine. So I didn't take that opportunity. So then that Kli is not a physical Kli, it's just a reality in Eilam Hazeh. So that reality, which could have been elevated, wasn't. So now it's blemished. That God, all of the godly energy that went into creating the possibility, not so much the possibility of that went into creating the reality of that event, right? Which seems happenstance, but it's not. It's called Hashgacha Pratis, right? All of the godly energy that went into the creation of that event is sort of dissipated by virtue of the fact that that event wasn't used for anything positive, right? Bump into someone on the street and yell, "Watch where you're going, you idiot! Don't you know that Rabbi Meir says Niskal Paisheya?" Okay, fine. It's an interesting way of using that little piece of godly reality called time that you just experienced. You do it in a frum way. You quote Rabbi Meir to him. Turn Rabbi Meir, never quote Rabbi Meir. Rabbi Meir now becomes a reason for you to yell at another person. Right? I'm so frum, I'm yelling at people. Yay. Right? Because I know Niskal Pesheya. I could even call him a Pesheya, I don't have to call him an idiot. You Pesheya. Okay. Fine. So I can bring a chas v'shalom, but a pagam, or obviously an elevation. V'loyer, not only that, el shegam ba'or, even the light of that reality, negeya inyan arveda. Arveda affects even the light of Seder Ishtalshus. Dihine, af sheheder aveda, even though the lack of aveda, pegim rak ba'kelim v'lei ba'or, affects the kli and not the or. Right? Because I'm dealing with the kli. Whether it's a physical object or a reality in the physical world, that's also somehow a function of Eris and Kalim, right? Time is a rather ethereal thing. So it's hard to call, but time is a kli. It's not or, it's a created reality. Time, right? Doesn't smell, doesn't weigh anything, but God created two things, space and time. The two things he created. How does time work? Well, we measure it by the movement of bodies in space, but exactly what it is not so clear. One thing we know, it passes quickly, right? Okay, that we know. The only time, there is one, the Rebbe talks about this in a fascinating sikha about Sfir Sa'emer. Sfir Sa'emer is when we turn time into a mitzvah object, like a lulav. Time becomes an object. We count it. It's the object of the mitzvah. Which is so interesting because, where's time? Space? No problem. No problem relating to space. Time? What is it? I don't know. It's there. It passes.
We don't do this with Shabbos as well, and preparing to Shabbos?
No, the time isn't a mitzvah object. Shabbos obligates us to do things just like the first 3 hours of every day obligates you to say Kriya Shema. But it's not that the time itself becomes the mitzvah object. Right? What's the mitzvah object of Kriya Shema? Interesting question. Right? It isn't really an object, you're saying words. Right? What's the mitzvah object of putting on tefillin? The tefillin are a mitzvah object. Right? Time doesn't become a mitzvah object in Shabbos. Maybe the wine in the Kiddush cup does. But in Sfir Sa'emer, what is the mitzvah? To count time, to somehow turn. Time is the thing that we're dealing with. Shabbos, we're not dealing with time. We're dealing with the physical reality within the context of a special place in time. That's definitely true.
When we do a mitzvah, we only bring light to the kelim that we directly affect, or other kelims as well. Like if I'm doing something for others, so there's light revealing on that kelim and the time and space.
But we haven't talked about the light yet. I mean, the Rebbe hasn't taken. He says we also affect the light. He hasn't explained how that works. In terms of the kli, I'm affecting a specific kli. That's the nature of kelim.
Right?
If I shake a lulav, I'm not affecting your lulav. I'm affecting my lulav. Right? True. The kli that I'm using for this mitzvah is called a lulav. Okay, so that lulav is being elevated. Clearly, that's we don't have any problem with that. Matter of fact, that kli might even become a chefsa shebekadusha. I can turn it into a holy object, and so it now shouldn't be thrown out. Now, lucky you're allowed to throw out a lulav after Sukkot. We don't. We burn it with our chametz. We want to get rid of it within the context of a mitzvah. We do burn it, right? It's not like we put it away and never touch it. Okay, but there's no question we've elevated that thing, and that thing has been used for a very, very important purpose. Whose lulav? My lulav, not your lulav. There's the best lulav that ever existed is sitting in the box. No one ever bought it. It wasn't elevated. Some kids took it. There was a box of lulavim outside of the store next to the shul, and kids picked up the lulav, and each had a lulav, and they found the tennis ball, and they were playing with the lulavim and the tennis ball, banging the tennis ball around in the parking lot next to shul, right? But that poor lulav, that's the nicest lulav that was ever created in the history of humankind. Show that to a rav, he would faint. Wow, it's perfect, it's straight, it's green, it's unbelievable, incredible, what a lulav. No one took it. So it was a hockey stick for some kids outside of Chabad house, right? It's the way Kalim work. So now maybe it's elevated by making these Jewish kids happy. I don't know, but it was supposed to be a lulav, right? Part of a lulav and esrog and hadassim and araves, and it was supposed to be part of that. It'd be part of Hallel, and it'd be taken in a sukkah before, early in the morning, and it was just so excited about what was happening that week, and nothing happened to it. Now that's not a pagum in the kli because chas v'shalom no one did an aveira with the lulav. But that lulav, for whatever reason, wasn't used. Right? But there's going to be a lot of lulavim that aren't used because the Eibishter made more lulavim than necessary, so to speak. Right? There's always going to be some left in the box. Right? So that's not so much a pagum in the Aveda. That's just it happens to be that lulav wasn't used. But the one that was used, that lulav is elevated. But I elevated mine. I can't elevate yours. You elevate yours. Dafka by lulav, you elevate yours and I elevate mine because I'm not allowed to take yours and you're not allowed to take mine on the first day. Right? It has to be yours. Okay. How does the or work? Well, let's see. Dine. Af sheheder aveda, that even though the lack of aveda, pegim rak b'hakelim v'lei ba'or, well, I affected the godly light in this lulav. Well, it was not something else. Someone uses some physical object for an improper purpose. Okay, so obviously the object wasn't elevated, but the godly light that's powering and energizing that object. I mean, it's still energizing and powering that object. Well, how did I affect that light? Well, let's see. I definitely affected the kli, that I get. Mikol mokem. Al yedei pagam v'kelim mistalik ha'or mi'akli. The light leaves the kli. I never say something very interesting. What do you mean the light leaves the kli? What does that mean? If you have a physical object and you used it for an improper purpose, so then all of a sudden it goes out of existence, the light that was powering it left the kli? That doesn't happen. We know that doesn't happen. You and I know that doesn't happen because we've seen it. We've seen other people, never you, chas v'shalom, but you've probably seen someone else use something for an improper purpose. Right? Okay. Fine. They were learning Rambam on their phone and they closed the Rambam and looked up the news. So does their phone go out of existence because they were just, made a pagum in the kli and then the or is mistalik min a kli? No smartphone. Gone. Well, of course not, right? That doesn't happen. So what does the Rebbe mean? So evidently, and we're going to see, by virtue of using that object for some positive purpose, the godly light that's powering that object will be connected to its source. But what if I use it for something improper? So then the light is mistalik. In other words, the light that was supposed to be elevated by virtue of the proper use disappears. It's not there. Not the light that's vitalizing the thing, right? The potential that object represented relative to the ability to reveal godly light in the world. So that light is mistalik. Not the light that's keeping this cup in existence. But after drinking the coffee, if I throw the cup at Amnon, chos v'shalom, so the cup doesn't go out of existence, right? Okay, but whatever godly light could be revealed by virtue of this cup, that godly light disappears, right? Another example in a more ethereal form, the godly light that you can bring about in this world and in all the worlds by virtue of saying Kriya Shema before 9:10, whatever it is now, 9:12, and you don't. So then that light's mistalik. That light which could have been revealed in the world isn't. It's gone. And that light can never be revealed. Why? Well, because it's never going to be Tes Zayin or now it's Yud Zayin. It's never going to be Yud Zayin Shvat Tavshin Pei Vav again. I'll do tshuva, I'll do Kriya Shema tomorrow. That's called tshuva. There's no question. I'll say Kriya Shema tomorrow. That's tshuva. But I can't reveal the light that I didn't reveal yesterday. I'm revealing Yud Ches Shvat's light, not Yud Zayin's Shvat's Kriya Shema light. Right? It's gone. Can't get it back. Right?
But the godly light that disappears, it creates the blemish on the vessel or something else.
No, the blemish of the vessel will be something else. It's the kli itself. The kli itself also has some state, right? I mean, kalim have a state of reality, and that reality is ultimately destined, hopefully, to reveal godliness. So what if I don't use it for its ultimate destiny? So then I've created a pagam in the kli, right? But there's also an effect in the or, because there's a level of godly light that the involvement with that kli was also supposed to bring about. That level of light is mistalik. Right? The kli doesn't disappear. The kli is still there. But that level of godly light, so to speak, disappears. That level of godly light that is hanging around, so to speak, waiting for your Kriya Shema today in order to be revealed. Hopefully everybody already said Kriya Shema today. If you're drinking coffee or anything, you already should have said Kriya Shema today, because we don't eat, drink, do anything before we say Kriya Shema. All the brachas and Kriya Shema. The Rebbe makes it easy for us. We don't have to put on tefillin. In the old days, they would put on tefillin, say Kriya Shema, take off their tefillin, and then have a cup of coffee, tea, biscuit, whatever they would have. Our Rebbe Baruch Hashem made our lives easier. He said, you don't have to put on tefillin before. You still have to say Kriya Shema. Every day, Shabbos, weekday, you should never ever eat or drink anything before you've said morning brachas and Kriya Shema. Right? Or whatever the mitzvah of the day is. Right? If it happens to be Sukkos, so you've shaken lulav in the sukkah. Right? Before you eat or drink. You also said Kriya Shema, but there's an extra mitzvah. Right? The one mitzvah that we allow ourselves to eat and drink before in order not to fast is we don't not drink, but we'll not eat, but we will drink. Is shefer. Right? That you can have a cup of coffee before davening Rosh Hashanah. Shouldn't have cake. You have a cup of coffee before davening Rosh Hashanah in order to daven better, because you're not thirsty and feeling faint. Right, but the reason not to would because I wouldn't eat before hearing shofar. Okay, beseder. So coffee, everybody says we can have. Cake, some people do, some people don't. I don't know. I shouldn't tell you don't eat cake. You can ask your mashpia whether you should eat cake. Some people do, some people don't. Okay, but I mean they don't sit down and have a bowl of cereal and put sugar and bananas on it. And if they want a piece of cake, they'll take a little piece of cake and eat it so they won't be hungry. Right? Okay. This whole thing that happens at Shabbatonim, that there's this 8-course breakfast before Shachris, is a little weird, but I mean, that's just what happens in these Shabbatonim. Yes, we do eat before davening, but, we don't have a gourmet meal before davening. Which fruits am I going to put in my yogurt? Just eat a couple of pieces of cake and have a cup of coffee. You want a glass of orange juice, have a glass of orange juice, a glass of water, and say, done. You have to go daven, right? It's not the time to, right? That's why the Hasidim of the Rebbe Shab were pretty holy Hasidim, and they would never eat cake just because eating cake. Why would you eat cake? It's just grub. It's just all taivas. I mean, there's no nutritional value in the cake. Right? It makes you not hungry. So what would they do? This is like crazy. They would wash before davening and have a piece of dry bread, but they wouldn't eat cake. Okay, they were pretty holy. We'll eat cake. But what shouldn't you eat? I'm just telling you this. You can talk to your mashpia. He tells you that I'm off my rocker. Fine, no problem. I have no problem. Right? Shouldn't have chocolate before davening. Not chocolate cake, chocolate. A piece of chocolate, something really sweet. It's never before davening. You're not eating that in order to make it so that you're not hungry during davening. You're eating that because you have a taiva for chocolate. Well, taivas before davening. You haven't talked to God yet. What are you doing? Right? So what do you eat? Eat a piece of cake and have a cup of coffee. Right? If Shabbos morning, want to have a bowl of cereal, just you're not going to eat for the next 3 hours, right? Okay, so you have a bowl of cereal, fine. Don't make it an aveda, my Shabbos morning meal. It's my favorite time. Right? Just eat fast and get it done with, and then go sit and learn chassidus or whatever, shmooze in the back of the shul, something, whatever. But this pulchan of eating. Yes, there's a heter to eat before davening. You look in Shulchan Aruch will tell you you're not allowed to eat before davening. Okay, so if anybody ever asks you, well, why do you eat before davening? So you better have a reason. right? So, well, we don't eat, not having a gourmet meal. Well, I don't know. It sure looks like a gourmet meal. I mean, why is that person standing above you holding lox and putting it in your mouth? Right? There's no more sushi left for the kiddush because everybody ate it before davening. That's not what eating before davening is. We eat before davening so we'll daven better, right? But not so that we'll have, I'm not going to daven better if I spent 20 minutes with every taiva that I have in the world relative to food, filling it up, right? In the Shabbatonim, I get it. I'm kidding when I say that. Obviously, the Shabbatonim, so I said, who's coming to the Shabbaton? Why are you doing it? You want them to have a good time, and you also want them to probably one of the most important things in these Shabbatonim. JLI does this right. They're amazing. It's the food. Why? What's one of the things you want to convince, especially in JLI? You want to convince all these rich people who come to JLI. What do you want to convince them?
Kosher food.
They can keep kosher and still eat the kind of food that they eat when they go to the most expensive restaurants in town that are feeding them treif. Right? You can still do that. You can eat kosher food and it's also going to be really, really good. That's so important for the people coming to JLI. Not the students, the adults who are paying, those big bucks to come. It's so important. And they do such a good job. The food is unbelievable. I mean, it's crazy. You walk out of there, you can't move. Exactly what they should be doing. There's no question, right? Because it's mamish gourmet kosher food. Well, a lot of people have to. Wow, really? I could have gourmet kosher food. So why don't we keep kosher? I don't know why not? Okay, good, perfect, amazing. And then the college Shabbaton is also the same thing, right? You don't have to give up your gashmias to be a little more religious. Fine, okay. Now, ultimately, you do. But they don't have to, that's not the first thing you have to tell someone, right? Because they might not get past the first step if you tell them that. Here's a dry cracker and some moldy cheese because we don't believe in gashmias. We do believe in gashmias, but hopefully not that you're drowning in your own taivas, right? Discussing the different sushis available at the kiddush. Sushi, right? So funny. They just pulled the wool over everybody's eyes, this sushi business. Took the cheapest food in the world called white rice, right? And put a little bit of stuff around it and a little bit of stuff in the middle and tell you to dip it in soy sauce, which is one of the cheapest liquids you can find in the world. Dip it in soy sauce so you can't taste anything but the soy sauce and call it a delicacy. What a ripoff. It's just unbelievable. And they've got the whole world just, spending their money on their sushi. Just such a joke. Yeah. Real sushi they don't cook. But you should be careful of raw fish, right? Highest instance of stomach cancer in the world by far is in Japan because of all the raw fish they eat. Very, very, very dangerous in terms of stomach cancer, raw fish. So stay away from raw fish. Not healthy. A little bit, it's no big deal. The little piece that's in your sushi, you have to look under a microscope to find it. It's such a ripoff. It's such a racket. It just got the whole world. White rice, what could be cheaper than white rice? Maybe, I guess, if there's vegan sushi, so it'll be brown rice in seaweed, and then you don't put fish in there. I don't know, you put a walnut or something. I don't know. I was thinking, I shouldn't say this on, anyway. When I was somewhere recently, you guys were also there. You might have heard this if you were paying attention. That someone was introduced as someone who had been a vegan for 40 years, right? So I was thinking in terms of what we were learning at the end of Basi Lagani Shtus to Klipa Shtus to Kedusha. What if someone were introduced in the same venue as someone who has only been eating badatz hechsher for the last 40 years? They've never let any food that isn't a badatz hechsher, badatz of the Eidach Haredis in their mouth. Would people have been as impressed? No. Probably what people's reaction? What's wrong with all the other Aksharim? I understand. They're saying that everybody else doesn't eat kosher food and only his food is kosher? Is that what he's saying by doing that? What kind of thing is that to say about a person, right? True. As soon as I was thinking that's shtus to the end of the Maimer, shtus to kedusha, shtus to klipa. That's exactly what the Rebbe's talking about, right? Oh wow, vegan for 40 years. I never ate anything but badats. No, I don't understand what's wrong with Rebbe Nucleus. Everybody get all upset. No, you guys are laughing because you know it's true, Duncan. Vegan, everybody goes, oh, wow, cool. Well, what a cool guy. It's so interesting, right? That's shtus the klipa and shtus the kedusha, right? Shtus the kedusha is you won't let anything in your mouth. But everybody's going to get all upset. Wow, mapitong. Right? As soon as I heard that, I go, wow. Because we had just finished learning. I said, wow, this is Pashut Shtus the Klipa, like mamish, the real thing. Right? You want to be a vegan for 40 years? Great! But, flying my flag, and I'm nice to animals. I'm terrible to people, but I'm good to animals. I burn down the houses of people who aren't nice to animals. This guy, I'm sure, doesn't do that. I'm saying just, it's like, right? There was that thing that I don't know whether it happens anymore, but it was very, very, very common about 30, 40 years ago. People throwing paint on a woman wearing a fur coat.
Oh, I didn't.
They would throw paint on her fur coat. So you're allowed to abuse a human being in order to be nice to the mink. That's a very interesting place to be in your life, right? Now the mink is dead, so it's not like you're even being nice to the mink, right? But you would abuse another human being in order to.
They're just gonna go buy another coat.
It's also true, right? It's just interesting. My grandfather was in the fur business. He moved to Canada when he was like 15. Say moved. I mean, he moved. I don't think he moved from Europe to Canada in those days, but whatever. He ended up in Canada, and he started working for the Hudson's Bay Company, which was, I think it's out of business, right? But that was the company in Canada because they were the fur company. And very soon he realized, he was about 16, 17. Very soon he realized he didn't want to work for someone else. He was that kind of guy. He didn't work for anybody else. So he opened up his own little geschäft, and he had his own fur company. And he actually succeeded. He was very, very successful. He actually once made a fur coat for Princess Elizabeth. Not Queen. She wasn't Queen yet. Princess Elizabeth came with her father, King George, to Canada, and he was asked by the Canadian government to give her a present, one of his fur coats. Princess Elizabeth, long ago. She was queen for like 60-something years. Like Princess Elizabeth wore one of my grandfather's fur coats. So he wants, my parents moved to Vancouver. Now, you don't need a fur coat in Vancouver because it's never cold. But so my grandfather sent his daughter, who he was carrying, he had 3 boys and a daughter. He was crazy about my mother. He sent her a fur coat. So my father was a struggling young doctor, just starting out, barely making the month. So he has this fur coat worth, 6 months' salary that he just got in the post. So he called up and said, I'm not accepting the first, she can't walk around in this, I should have a Rolls Royce if she's going to walk around in this coat. She's not walking around in this coat, and I can't. So my grandfather says, no, don't you dare send back that fur coat. If you're going to send back anything, send back my daughter. Don't you say, but my father sent back the fur coat. He didn't send back the daughter. Kept her for the next 70 years or whatever they were married. Right. So, but the fur coat, my grandfather with his fur coats. I think my mother still has a couple of fur coats in the cupboard that she got from her father who made fur coats. But that mink, a person can sort of lose sight of what's important and what isn't important, Today they call it virtue signaling, right? My wife sent me something actually brilliantly yesterday. Some town in California, every garbage dump, everywhere you take garbage has 3 things. And if you do not separate your garbage, you have a $500 fine if you don't put each thing in the right bin. Someplace in California. It says what the name of the town is. Beautiful place, right on the ocean. There's a picture of bins right on the ocean. There's a boat behind, gorgeous place, right? And 3 bins, and you have to separate your garbage into those 3 bins. The plastics and right. Then there's a video. You got $500 fine if you're caught not doing this. Then there's a video. Twice. You see him doing this twice. The man from the city comes, empties all the bins into exactly the same bin, takes that bin and throws it in the garbage truck together. Absolute, complete, and total nonsense, the whole thing. But you'll pay a $500 fine. The city, complete sheker. It's unbelievable. And the guy's out there doing it in front of everybody. And if you're going to do that, at least do it at night so no one can see you, right? He's out there, broad daylight, takes the first one, puts it in a little black thing that he's got on wheels, black garbage bin this big. Takes the second one, pours it in the same bin. Takes the third one, pours it in the same bin. You see him do that twice, 2 different places where there are 3 separate places for you and I to put our garbage, and if we don't, it's $500, right? And then you see him take it, after the second one, you see him take it to the truck and dump it in the truck. It's all together. This is the ultimate in virtue signal. It's just astounding. Doesn't matter what really happens, just as long as I feel good about myself. Right? So that's making a pagum in the kli, it's histalku sa'or, everything. That's the ultimate in the shtus of Eilam Hazeh. Shtus the klipa. Okay, so let's go weiter in the or. So the or is mistalik mina kli. In other words, the or, which was destined to be revealed by virtue of a certain action, isn't revealed. So to speak, it recedes above. Vasiluk mia kli, and this distancing itself from the kli, nager gam ba'or, affects the or. Why? Shar kavana sa'or, that aspect of godly light. Now, you and I turn it into little pieces of light, but obviously that's not what it is, but we're just so physical, that's what that's our image of it. Shar kavana sa'or, he shiur b'kelim, that it should be illuminated in kelim, and through that kli. Again, we're not talking about the light that's vitalizing the kli, we're talking about the godly light that is destined to be revealed by the proper use of that kli. Those are 2 different levels of godly light. How that works, what godly light looks like, but okay, we can appreciate the difference between A and B. So the or is affected, because what was the destiny of that or? What was the purpose of that or? To be revealed through that kli, through the proper use of that kli. That doesn't happen. So then the or is mistalik. And then the or is by virtue of not fulfilling its purpose. There's a certain descent and so to speak, pagum in the or. Not a pagum in the or. But ultimately, if something fulfills its purpose, it's elevated. And if it doesn't fulfill its purpose, then it's not elevated. Kaven sorry. Ukasher or mistalik miakli, azai eina or mimales tafkida, doesn't fulfill its purpose, which was to be revealed through that positive action by virtue of using that kli for that positive thing. And that's the idea that our avodah also affects or.
Tafkir is fulfilled.
Purpose. Kaven. Shebeheder avodah, with a lack of avodah, nasa siluka or shemistalik miakli. The light leaves the vessel. Again, what light? The light that was whose purpose it was to be revealed by virtue of the proper use of this kli. Ubamela leinish lemas akavanah shabay. Right. So the godly light that's powering, that's destined to be revealed by your Kriya Shema today. Right? So if someone doesn't say Kriya Shema, so that level of godly light isn't revealed in the world. That's mistalik mina kli. Right? Okay? The godly light that's destined to be revealed by shaking this lulav today. The person doesn't shake the lulav, so then that level of light doesn't mean the lulav goes out of existence. There's still a lulav. The level of godly light that was destined to be revealed by virtue of that isn't revealed. Which says so much about the potential of a day in Eilam Hazeh, in terms of how many different opportunities we might have to reveal godly light. And, the flip side of that coin is how many of those opportunities we might miss just by virtue of not having our antennae up. So worried about myself and my own spiritual growth that I actually forget about God. Right. Wow. Furthermore, she'inyan avodah nageh gamba or shelamayla mislavshus bekelim. Right? That this avodah affects also levels of light that are beyond being clothed in kelim. Up until now, we were talking about the and the kli that are relating to each other within the context of the existence of this particular kli, this particular lulav, this particular moment in time, whatever it happens to be. But what about higher levels of light that aren't necessarily shaykh to that particular kli, which is something along the lines that Tzvi asked, I think. She'inyan aveda nagea gam ba'or shelamayla mislavshus bekelim. Share gam ha'or shelamayla mislavshus bekelim. Even those levels of light that are beyond these lavshus bekelim, beyond being clothed in a kli. Now what's that? Arich. Right? Keser. Harehu shoresh al kol panim la'or hamislavish bekelim. It's the source of the light that's clothed in the kelim, and therefore it's affected by virtue of the fact that it's the source of this light which is supposed to be revealed in certain ways in the context of Olam Hazeh, and that affects all of Seder Ishtalshelus, which is really the answer to Tzvi's question. All of Seder Ishtalshelus is affected if you and I, that light descended down from Arich, through Atzilus, through Bria, through Yetzirah, through Asiyah Ruchni, into Asiyah Gashmi, into the physical world, and it was ultimately that whole process, that whole journey was ultimately so that you and I can take advantage of that reality to elevate it and connect it to its source, and that should fulfill its purpose. Now, I missed the boat. Okay, so then that affects the whole marechet, the whole system. Right? That light had a purpose. And for whatever reason, that purpose wasn't fulfilled. Okay, now what if I do fulfill that purpose? So that's amazing. So that I affect also the whole of Seder Ishtalshelus is affected positively by virtue of the fact that you and I down here have fulfilled the purpose of that particular thing that we get to encounter in Olam Hazeh. Amazing. V'zeu she'inyan aveda, and that's what we say, that our aveda affects arich. Because when we do aveda properly, so then there's this healthy flow of godly energy and godly light through all the worlds, and it's being revealed in this world properly and in a healthy way. And so the whole marechet, the whole system is working the way it's supposed to work. If chas v'sholem, it's down here, something doesn't happen that should happen, so we plug up the whole system. The pipes get clogged, so to speak. Then the whole thing can back up. So then when Arich was mashpia, that light into Atzilus, what was the ultimate purpose of that? So that light should be effective, should ultimately express itself in a proper way down here in Olam Hazeh. So if it does, amazing, incredible. So the whole system is working in a healthy and natural way. But if not, so then it gets clogged up, and so Arich is also affected because that light, the purpose of that light isn't expressed. There's 2 lines on the next page, so I'd like to finish it because the Rebbe just deals with Atik, and then we've seen what the Rebbe says because he's going to take issue with everything he said on this page. Okay, in a minute. Right? So Arich is also affected. Ki bechinas Arich hu shorish l'net solim. It's the source of Atzilus. The kevin shebenet solim, and since in Atzilus nagein yinaveda canal, our Aveda affects Atzilus. Lochein, so then also gam b'shorish l'net solim. Also the source of it is affected. Bechinas Arich, because ultimately its function is to send light down, so to speak, just to put it in the crassest terms, but that's the only way we can understand it. Negain in Aveda, therefore our Aveda also affects Arich, because it's also part of the whole system of this healthy flow of light through all the worlds, and ultimately be expressed through actions down here in physical time and physical space. What?
Light affects our Avoda, or our Avoda affects?
Our Aveda affects the light. Rak, but bechinas Atik, Amar Chazal, but relative to Atik, Chazal said, "V'chi ma'ich bislei." What does he care? Why? Ki bechinas Atik Adon Yochid Sharash Sharashim. That's what we said when we quoted the Avedas HaKodesh yesterday. last 3 lines on the previous page, which are right here on the right. Right? Shoresh Shoreshim Daika. Specifically, Shoresh Shoreshim, the source of sources, not the source. V'loi Shoresh Netzalim. It's not the source of Atzilus. It's the source of the source. Kevin Shehu L'mayla Miliyah Shoresh Netzalim. It's beyond. It's transcendent of being the source of Atzilus. Too powerful to be the source of Atzilus. It's a level of transcendent reality. It's the being of Keser. What Keser is? What's Keser? Transcendent. Removed from the world. That's the word Yeatek, which we're going to see. Ube'emes nivdal hu gam mi'ashorashim. It's actually distant and separate from being a source of anything. Shar atik hu miloshin v'ye'atek. To uproot. Avram uprooted his tent. V'hainu shu muvdal gam be'bechinas arech. It's even transcendent of arech. Uma shenikra shoresh shoreshim, and that which it's called shoresh shoreshim, eina ela b'shem hamushal bilvad. Where have you seen those words before? Shem hamushal, a borrowed term. Where have you seen those words before? You've all seen it, every one of you. Guaranteed. Very beginning of Tanya, where the Rebbe is talking about tzaddik in Russia, right? So why is someone who is majority of mitzvahs called a tzaddik if even one mitzvah makes a person, one averim, so it makes a person a Russia, after the Rebbe has explained what a tzaddik in a Russia. So he says the word tzaddik in Russia is shem hamushal le'inyan schar va'inish. It's only a borrowed term relative to the notion of reward and punishment, but not in terms of defining the essential reality of the essential level of that person. Right? A tzaddik is someone who doesn't do anything against the Eibishter's will. In any, not only it doesn't even have a yitzhar to do anything against the Eibishter's will. That's what a tzaddik is. So how come Chazal say a tzaddik is majority of mitzvahs and a Russia is majority of averas? So the Rebbe says that shem hamushal le'inyan schar v'inish. Right at the beginning of time. Right, that's the borrowed term for schar v'inish. But we're not talking about tzaddik. Really is something else completely. So too here. Why is Atik called Shoresh Shoreshim? Well, Atik also has a function, right? So its function is to be the source of the light that's drawn into Arach, but in no way, shape, or form is it defined by its function. It's defined by its being. Some things are defined by their function, right? Why? Well, because that's what they're all about. So how do you define a car? By its function. That's all it is. It's just chitzonius. That's why Gashmius is all chitzonius. What's Gashmius about? Function. Right? Don't love your car. Your car has no being. It exists, but has no being. It just has function. Gets you from A to B. Does that gets you from A to B comfortably? Yes, great car. Love it. Love it? No, you know what I mean. Great car. Never gives me any trouble. I'm never in the shop. Right? I like the sound system. It's I can hear what I'm listening very clearly, and it's very easy to work with. And I like the little screen. I love the camera in the back. That's new for me. I love that. The camera where you see where you're going in the back goes beep, 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 beep. And when you get to the red line, stop. Fantastic. You don't have to turn around like this and try to look out the side of your glasses where you can't see. Right? It's fantastic. Love it. I've had 2 cars with that now. Greatest thing ever. Okay, good. It's a piece of function. There's no being. Didn't die. Doesn't live and die. Right? Just stopped being useful. So you take it off the road, right? You inform the Ministry of Registration or whatever that the car's no longer on the road, and now you don't have to pay for your yearly thing. Okay, fine. Good. But people have being, okay? So Atik is really all about being. It has a function, but it's all about being, just like people. People are all about being, not function. We have function. What if we don't have function? What if a person has very limited function, still has as much being? And we'll define them in terms of that. That's why we won't off them when they stop having function, like some people might want. Right? And this level is not affected by our Veda.
So what is Shem?
Shema Mushal, a borrowed term, like a shoel. That's the level that it says if you did an avera matifel by, you haven't affected him. Your iniquities What have they done? Im tzedakta, if you did an act of righteousness, matitule, what have you given him? That level of godliness, I don't affect. That's what the Rebbe said up until now. The whole my record of Eretz and Kalim and that shaykh to Arich, that we affect. Above that, no effect whatsoever. Okay, how does that work? Well, we don't know how it works because we don't understand what godly light looks like. Okay, but we have an inkling of how that can be. Fine. Up until now, we're fine. Now, theoretically, that should be the end of the mimer, but it's not. Because the next thing the Rebbe is going to tell us is everything I just said. Not everything. What I just said to you isn't the answer to the question. We'll see why not. The chasna, the bus back I saw was 12 o'clock. That's sort of late. When's chuppah? Anybody know? You guys are leaving to go there at 9:30?
I think just for the dancing.
Right. No, that I understand.
Yeah.
That's pretty late.
Yeah.
So I wonder when the chuppah is. I can't get there till about 9:30 either. I have something I have to do between 7 and 9. So we say that, I don't know. I mean, Chassidus, to my guess, there will be some sort of